remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place.
Hello, Internet world. This is Sean with Allen's Own, and today I'm going to cover Genesis 19. This is where we're going to get into the famous story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, in this story, we have at this point, the emissaries of the Lord have arrived, having previously spoke to Abraham, and they the men of Sodom and Gomorrah begin to surround the house. Now, here's the fun part, because the men once again decide that the best solution to their problems were to again give over the women to be raped, sodomized, or whatever, by the men. You see, that always seems to be the famous solution in the Bible. Just as Abraham had did, so has Lot decided to do here with this crowd. And the emissaries remain terribly silent in the situation. They have nothing to say about this idea of handing over the women to be tortured and raped and sodomized. No problem. Why wouldn't there be any sharp rebuke of such an insane idea by the emissaries of this holy God? Anyhow, we just see again, as we're going to see in many other places in the Bible, that women are treated as second-class humans. You know, you got to love how God remains silent all the time, and always at the most perfect points and times in particular situations. Now, the emissaries we'll see in the story only react when the men begin to try to lay their hands on Lot. They decide that they're going to attack Lot and do him worse than they're going to do the emissaries later. So now they've put their hands forth and bring them inside the house and close the door, and then they eventually smite the people with blindness. Now, verse 17, we're going to skip past all the other stuff. Verse 17, we get the famous commandment, the infamous command not to look back as the city is being destroyed. You know, overall, really, I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah, it more than likely is a tale of two cities, or maybe a couple more, that were destroyed by a volcano eruption back then. And once again, as normally done, it was attributed to God, just as with this flood. You know, it's no different than the things that happen today with people that are living in remote tribes. Now, with this story, supposedly it's all about this outrageous sin and homosexuality that was rampant in the city, and that's why it had to be destroyed. You know, supposedly according to Abraham's plea, we see that there must have not even been as little as 10 righteous people in the city. So it's so wicked it deserved to be destroyed with fire and brimstone. Now, I wonder how many other cities have been just as wicked, but somehow were not destroyed by Sodom and Gomorrah. I wonder why that is, because surely there had to be other cities that, were living their own way and serving other false gods according to the Bible. Now, why would Sodom and Gomorrah get the treatment of fire and brimstone? Well, I can tell you why I believe they got the treatment of fire and brimstone, and that's because there was a volcano that destroyed these cities, and it was written off later on as something from God because of evil and wickedness. This is the same thing that's done today. You watch the National Geographic Channel, and you see these remote tribes and these people that are still living in an ancient time and mentality. Anything evil, anything with a negative result is written off as either bad spirits or God's punishment, his vengeance. And more likely, it's always because somebody's being bad, humanity is being wicked, mankind is being evil. So this is a righteous judgment and punishment from God. So that's what I believe happened. Now, later on, we have Lot's wife that, of course, turns back and she becomes this pillar of salt. The famous story about how she turned back and became a pillar of salt. Now, Christians try to explain that this is either because she actually literally fell behind the rest of the family and got caught up in the destruction, which I really cannot imagine how far she could have fallen behind so that she was destroyed but not the rest of them. So I don't know about that explanation. Another explanation is that somehow her heart, it wasn't that she looked back physically, even though the command was regarding not looking back physically. But anyhow, suppose it's not about physical looking back. It was about that in her heart she was looking back. Her heart was still in Sodom and Gomorrah and in the wickedness of that land, and that's why she got caught up and turned into a pillar of salt. Even though, again, that story sounds like something that Christians are merely coming up with to try to fill in the gaps of this missing story, because we cannot see why Lot's wife would get caught up so much to where she would be destroyed with Sodom and Gomorrah compared to Lot and his daughters and other people in this household. It makes little sense, but that's their attempt at an explanation. Maybe there's others I'm not aware of. Either way, this becomes another dumb story, leaving us with little answers, vague at best, and really has nothing to do, again, with answering any kind of pertinent questions to this existence. And, you know, I find it funny that with that fact that religious people still yet, Christians, whether it be Christians using this Old Testament, whether it be Judaism using the Tanakh, or whether it be Islam using part of the Tanakh. It's amazing to me that this book doesn't really answer any pertinent questions. I find it even amazing that religious people somehow are capable of dogmatically telling everybody how the universe came about, even though their holy texts don't really explain it all, except for in ambiguous terms, in very vague paragraphs, regarding how God, Allah, Yahweh created the universe. These answers are not dealt with. They're not even really explained. There's just a simple, well, he spoke and it happened, or he willed it and it came forth. No real explanations, no real trying to showcase the proof and demonstrate how it all came together. No, that's not done, my friends, but somehow religion has such a bold confidence that their God indeed had to do it, even though there's no evidence to say such. You know, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I believe in what I can see, and that's the universe. Now, what was the source of that? You know, I don't know, and really nobody else knows. But that's what I see. I see a universe. I don't have to look too far for evidence of that. I don't see an evidence of a God. So why should I bother with that? So if the universe came about of itself, or whether it came about from another source, either way, no one truly knows what that source is. And that source, you know what, is not really interested in trying to tell us or identify itself. So why would I even bother entertaining the idea? And then I sure don't want to sit there and be as dogmatic as religious people are to claim to know specifically that it had to be one particular source, which usually in their case is their particular God. Go figure. Anyhow, Genesis 19 ends like most of the chapters in this strange book, and that is with a very tall and silly tale. In this case of Genesis 19, it gets into how the daughters, in some way or another, I would not be able to tell you how, they determined that there were no other men for them to be able to lay with to bear children. There's just none other available, and they were in a dire situation, so now they had to choose their own dad to sleep with. So of course the story goes that they both would get him drunk on separate days, they would both sleep with him, they would both become pregnant, and here comes the beginning of the Moabites and the Ammonites. Now, of course, I simply believe that this is creating a story of the beginning of a lineage, so that later on, when they're written off as being destroyed and eradicated by Israel, there's no love loss, there's no pain, there's no feeling sorry for them, because these two groups started off through a wicked and evil act of two daughters sleeping with their own father, getting him drunk. And you know, later on, obviously, Israel goes to battle with both these groups. So again, I think that's all it's about. Explain it away by saying, hey, this is a story about how these two daughters, they had no more hope, so they felt that their dad was the only way they could have children. What an awesome job. So 19 chapters down, and yet little to nothing regarding proof of God being behind anything, any kind of questions being answered regarding this existence, this life. No, all we get is a lot of tall tales, my friend. And this will continue on. So until next time when we deal with Genesis chapter 20, this is Sean with Allen Zone, and you all have it easy.